Thank you, everyone, joining us today from across the country and around the world. I'm Abby Schwab, Vice President of Programming here at Conscious Capitalism, Inc. On behalf of the entire CCI team, we appreciate you taking the time to learn and grow in community with us. Today, we're joined by JeVon McCormick, President and CEO of Scribe Media, Conscious Capitalism, Inc. board member, and the recipient of a host of recognitions and awards, including just last week, Entrepreneur of the Year by Ernst & Young. JeVon has a new book coming out next week, and we're excited to talk to him about it, as well as to get his insights into modern leadership. As many of you know, conscious capitalism is a philosophy that emphasizes the human nature of business, as well as a movement of business leaders from around the world to change the practice and perception of capitalism as a means to elevate humanity. Conscious Capitalism, Inc. is a nonprofit organization dedicated to catalyzing that movement by creating learning opportunities like today's session and building systems of support for practicing conscious capitalists through our senior leader network membership. Several times a month, we're offering these virtual gatherings as a way for the community to see how this philosophy takes shape in the leadership journeys and the business practices of those in our network. Today's gathering will run for about 45 minutes. JeVon and I will be in conversation for about 30 minutes, and then we'll transition to audience questions during the last 10 or 15 minutes of our session. Please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try to get to as many of your questions as we can during our time together. If you have any technical issues during the session, just email us at info@consciouscapitalism.org. And now it is my pleasure to welcome JeVon McCormick. I'm going to hold the majority of my introduction of JeVon and his background off for him, as he is best able to tell it. But as I mentioned, he's the president and CEO of Scribe Media, a multi-million-dollar publishing company that was recently ranked the #1 top company culture in America by Entrepreneur magazine. Congratulations. JeVon's experience shaped a mindset for modern leadership and now guides his service as a CEO of a massively successful company that is redefining the world of publishing. And JeVon, it's so great to be here with you today. We've known each other for a few years now, having met at the Conscious Capitalism CEO Summit, and this conversation feels like we're coming full circle. And I always enjoy our one-on-one conversations. I'm excited to share some of your wisdom and insights with the community. So we're really happy to have you.
Thank you, Abby. This is going to be very fun and enjoyable. So let's make it happen.
Awesome, excellent. So I had the chance to read the Modern Leader manuscript a couple of weeks ago, and I flew through it. It really packed a punch. And JeVon. So what prompted this book was in large part your name, JeVon. I know your first book, I Got There, focused largely on your life story thus far. Is it possible to share, I know it's a big story, is it possible to share an abbreviated version for this audience to give them context for the rest of the conversation we're going to have, including how your name went from JT to JeVon in 2020?
All right, let's see if we can do this in like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. So, I'm going to go all the way back from birth because it's important. So I was born to, my father was Black. He was a Black pimp and drug dealer back in the 1970s. He put women on a street corner. They sold their bodies, and my dad took every dollar. Along the way, he also managed to father 23 children. So I am one of 23. My mother, she was white. She was an orphan. She grew up in the 1950s institutional orphanage. When she turned 17 years old, they gave her a small suitcase, $20, and said, "Good luck, there's the world." She had never seen the outside of those four walls. She didn't even know what a street light was. So unfortunately for my mother, one of the first people she met was my fast-talking, well-dressed, quite a bit older father. And so those are my parents. That's what I was born into the world. My mother and I grew up in extreme United States poverty. I say United States because there's a big difference between poverty outside of this country and poverty in. So, but nonetheless, we grew up extremely poor here in the United States. I was sexually molested as a child by one of my dad's prostitutes at age 6, 7, 8 years old. I was in and out of juvenile prison 3 different times. I was homeless at the age of 13. I was abandoned with 3 of my siblings in a house. I never graduated high school. I have a GED. I don't have a college degree. And so that is there's a lot more details that go into that, but that's the overview. And then to Abby's point of my name and really what drove a lot of modern leader. My first job after I got my GED was cleaning toilets at a restaurant. And then my second job was actually in corporate America. My mother helped me get a job at an insurance company, and I was the mail boy. I was as low as you could get into the company. I pushed a cart. I was a file clerk and a mail boy. And after doing that job for about 3 years, I wanted more. I wanted to do something else other than just work in the mailroom. So this is back in the early 90s. This is long before you could just do a email blast of your resume everywhere. So I would cold call and I would try to, gain employment somewhere, and no one would return my calls. Couldn't get an appointment to save my life. And so finally, one gentleman, nice white guy, he picked up the phone and he said, "Hey, I got a question for you." He said, "How did you get a Black first name and an Irish last name?" And so I don't know where my last name comes from. My mom got it in the orphanage. So right off the bat, I was just elated to find out, oh shit, I got an Irish last name. This is amazing. And so I wanted to call my mom immediately. But when I hung up from the call, it hit me. Oh, Javon, that's why they're not picking up the phone for me. So in that moment, I made the decision that I was going to edit myself and change my name. My full name is JeVon Thomas McCormick. So I started going by JT. The next week, I got all the appointments I could ask for. Appointments got on people's calendars, and I can't tell you how many times I would show up to someone's office and they would go, "Oh, you're not who I expected." And of course, I didn't say it, but in my mind, I would always think, well, what did you expect? But so yeah, that's the origin of where I came from and a little bit of how we are where we are right now.
That's awesome. Thank you. I know there's much more to that story, and we want to get into the bulk of this around the book. So let me dive into this. So as CEO of a publishing company and someone who writes about leadership, you point out that a huge number of leadership books have the word playbook in the title. And you say that your book is explicitly not a playbook. In fact, you want to throw out what you call the old playbook. And when I think about it, I kind of picture it like a dusty, worn, and uninspired book, right? And there are dozens of examples in the book of the old playbook. Tell us a bit more about the old playbook we've been using for hundreds of years. What is it, and why do you think it's no longer serving today's leaders?
So the old playbook, it's very exclusionary. It was built for a specific group of people that if you meet the playbook rules, they will allow you and accept you into the playbook, if you will. And you can go back to this really, and we're not going to turn this into a total race debate because it's not just what it is. Some of this exclusionary playbook even goes into college degrees. We set up resume systems right now to where if you don't have a college degree, you don't even get a look. And that's a very exclusionary system that is very broken, because ask yourself within your own companies, does every role in your company require a degree? I mean, let's be fair when we ask that question and look at it. Does it require a degree, or can we teach, coach, and mentor people into these roles? Because if you have a liberal arts degree, what's that got to do with some of the roles within your company? But the playbook itself, if you look at this, go back to 1955. That's when we first started tracking the Fortune 500 in this company, the 500 largest companies in America. From 1955 through 1987, there were no Black CEOs on the list. 30 plus years, no Black CEOs. So this playbook was built very exclusionary. And if you want to go a little bit further, very, very few women on the list during that time period as well. And that's why I said, this isn't just a race issue. So what that means is you've got a playbook for the business world, for corporate America, that was built for a specific group of people. And if you do not fit that playbook, you're not getting in. And that's the playbook that I feel is not serving our society right now. We're missing out on so many talented people for what I find to be dumbass reasons on why we're not welcoming people into our companies, into business, and that playbook, it needs to be shredded.
Mm-hmm. And this is the playbook that had you changing your name from Javon to JT, right?
Exactly. That's exactly. I edited myself to fit the playbook. And here's the funny part. Here's the sad part. Here's the successful part. It worked. And that's the problem with it, is that I had to edit myself to fit this playbook. And that just should not happen. There's no reason why someone should have to edit themselves to get in.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. And I'm going to jump forward towards the end of the book where you write, the modern leader's mission is to open their eyes, open doors, and open a backpack. And that theme, open eyes, open doors, and an open backpack, is really at the heart of this book. So without giving too much away, what can you share about that framework?
So open your eyes. Let's be fair with ourselves. We don't know what we don't know. And so in knowing that, let's ask ourselves, why are we in the situation that we're in? Let's open our eyes. And I'm going to give you one example to this. You hear so many companies say, oh, we only hire culture fits. We only hire culture fits. Now, here's the other side of this. You have a lot of companies out there, and I celebrate them, that have openly admitted, yeah, we got a diversity problem. We own it. We know we have one. But here's where it gets interesting. In one breath, they'll admit they have a diversity problem. In the next breath, they'll say, we only hire culture fits. Now, let's look at the insanity behind this. If you have a diversity problem, but you're consistently saying you only hire culture fits, do you not realize that what you're doing is creating your own diversity problem? So in opening your eyes, sit back and ask yourself, why do we have the system and the playbook that we're running off of? And so many people have asked me this. They're like, okay, well, Javon, if the playbook is broken, why do you feel that we've run off of this playbook for so long? And my response has been, okay, the same people who created the playbook are the same people who created the phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So it wasn't broken for those who fit the playbook. So there was no reason to have to address changing the playbook. But now it's showing it's not even cracks in the playbook now. It is just, it's on fire. And when you look at that, so open your eyes. Let's look at, wow, only hire culture fits. No, we should be hiring culture ads. The term culture fit should actually go away. You want to add people to your culture. You want to have diverse backgrounds, people who think differently, come from a different background, have a different point of view. That's how we improve in business. And then, so that's the first one, is open your eyes, open your doors. I'm not even saying hire everyone, but you all just heard me tell you, Javon couldn't even get in. I couldn't get an interview. I couldn't even get in front of someone to get the interview. I had a Fortune 10, and I'm going to be very, very detailed when I say this because I gave this person my word. There's a Fortune 10 head of HR, and this individual said to me, and openly admitted, said, yes, I've done that before. And I so appreciated it. And what they had done was they admitted, because of the name at the top of the resume, they just pushed it to the side. And that's done so many times, consciously, unconsciously. And I've shared this with people. On your resume, it could say you got your undergrad at Harvard, you got your master's at Harvard, and maybe you went to Harvard Medical School. But if at the top of the resume, it says Rayvonte Jenkins, some people won't even make it down to the fact that you've got all those credentials from Harvard. And this individual owned it and said, to this day, it still haunts this individual that they did that. And I really appreciated the fact that they owned it, because that's what I mean by, let's open our eyes, open our doors. We've all made mistakes. And more importantly, when we're opening our doors and we're opening our eyes, let's be fair with one another. No one has become the enemy. I've got a real problem with now as a society, we have turned the 6'2" middle-aged white guy into the enemy. That's bullshit. And hate does not fix hate. And so someone asked, well, when is privilege a negative thing? When you have privilege and you don't do anything with it to assist other people into the privilege that you have, that's when it's a negative thing, because it's not a bad thing to be born to a two-parent home, upper middle class. That's a wonderful thing. My kids, they won the lottery of parents. They should never be embarrassed of their privilege. And I think it's sickening that we've turned privilege into a negative term. It's only negative when we don't use that privilege to benefit others. So open your eyes, open your doors, open a backpack. Here's the backpack thing. In our country, we have this thing, you can hear it damn near every day. Education is the key. Education is the key. Well, I'm one of those kids that come from the inner city, and I got bussed out to the nice schools in third, fourth, fifth grade. And while I understood what was going on, it was to try to give these poor kids a chance and a leg up. No one thought through what was going on. And so you took us from the inner city where, okay, we're with all the other poor kids who are just like us. So there's a bit of, okay, well, at least we're poor together. And you took some of these poor kids and you shipped them out to the suburbs. Yes, the schools were nicer. Yes, there was less violence and fights, but here's what happened. You sent me out there and then the teacher said, okay, who needs a piece of paper? Who needs a pencil? Meanwhile, I'm sitting next to Jimmy. Jimmy opens up his Spider-Man backpack. Jimmy pulls out a Spider-Man pencil. Jimmy pulls out a Spider-Man folder. I'm thinking Jimmy's about to start to shoot web that he's damn Spider-Man because everything he has is Spider-Man. And no one took the time to think through, wow, okay, we took them out to the suburbs, but we didn't even give them the tools to be able to receive an education. So it's like calling a plumber to come to your house and they don't bring tools with them. What's the point? So when I say open a backpack, many of us on this call, many of us in business, Fortune 500 companies don't realize how easy what I'm about to say is. We're based here in Austin, Texas, and we're on the gentrified side of town. So when we moved in, I'm a big believer in giving back to the communities that you live and work in, not just where you live, but where you work. So we set up in this community. So I said, okay, let's find the closest elementary school with the highest percentage of free lunch recipients, because you find those schools and it's usually a school that's in a poverty area. So we found one that's 97%, and just so happens it's literally 2 blocks away from us. So we went and got the list of the elementary school, almost 500 kids, and 5th grade down to kinder, backpacks and every supply that was needed for each grade. Got the list. And we bought backpacks and supplies for the entire elementary school. Guess how much it cost us? $18,000. Now, don't get me wrong, that is a number, but $18,000 in business, most of us, $18,000 is kind of a crumb of a number compared to some of the things that we spend money on. I mean, some of us spend $50, $75, $150,000 on company outings. Well, imagine if we took $18,000 of that and change the lives of an entire elementary school. Imagine if JP Morgan Chase actually adopted an entire school district. So that's the whole premise behind, open your eyes, open your doors, open your backpacks.
Love it. Thank you. And you have a lot of ideas for tactical ways to create environments of welcome in business, where regardless of an individual's identity, their situation, they can feel safe coming to work and they know they'll be taken care of. And one of my favorite examples is your emergency fund. Can you share more about how that works and the outcome, and any other just kind of quick ideas that you have or tips for people around creating environments of welcome that don't reflect that old playbook?
So if you notice there, Abby is very specific, and I appreciate it. Yeah, she keeps referencing a culture of welcome. So right now with the whole DEI and it, which is garbage. Stop saying DEI. It's diversity, equity, and inclusion. Period. Say the words. Let's call it what it is. Stop shortening it because it's easier to roll off. It's not easier to roll off the tongue. Nobody wants to say diversity, and so that's the big piece. In creating a culture of welcome, we don't care who you voted for. We don't care how you identify. We don't care if you believe in God or if you don't believe in God. We don't care if you're transgender. We don't care if you're gay, Black, white, Latino. It does not matter. Are you human? Welcome. And many people have asked, well, where did you get that philosophy from? Well, growing up, being mixed race, Black and white, Black people didn't like me because I was half white. White people didn't like me because I was half Black. And so I always had a problem fitting in, being welcomed, belonging, being accepted. And so those words are words that I did not want to deal with anymore. And I would always be asked this question: what are you? I knew what they were asking me. They wanted to know what's your nationality, but they were asking the wrong question. What are you? I'm human, period. And so in creating a culture of welcome, are you human? Great. Can you perform in the role? Can you drive results? Can you uphold the company values? Great. Welcome. And so that's creating a culture of welcome, not acceptance, not belonging. Even right now, belonging has become a very hot word. And I push back at that because belonging implies that someone doesn't. And so welcome, we welcome you. And when you're in the building, we're going to make sure you continue to know that you're welcomed here, because it's not just getting them in, it's also making sure they continue to be welcomed once they're in. So to Abby's point, what the emergency fund that we created, I read a piece that said 45% of Americans don't have a spare $400 in case of an emergency. And that really hit home for me because my mom never had a spare for it. We didn't even know what the word spare was. So a spare $400, that wasn't happening. And I felt like in our position as a company that we should be able to create safety for the people that we serve and support. So we put into place a $1,500 emergency loan. Interest-free, no questions asked. If you come in one day and you're like, hey, I need to hit the emergency fund, we don't ask why. We just set it up. You don't start paying it back for 60 days. No interest. We set up payments. We put that in place 4 years ago. To this day, there have been 5 people who have actually utilized it. And then Abby, I appreciate you bringing that up. We actually increased it to $2,500 this past Monday, given what just took place with the Roe versus Wade ruling.
Amazing. I love the idea of the culture of welcome and the many ways that you're being thoughtful about that. And I have a question for you coming up that's going to touch on that, but I want to hit this one first because I'm seeing this. And just as a note, we're going to be hopping into Q&A from the audience soon. So if you do have any questions for Javon, I know you have you here to confirm you are happy to hear any question, right? You love kind of the more challenging, the better. So if you have any questions for Javon, feel free to drop them into the Q&A and we'll get to those in just a few minutes. So to that, I see you on LinkedIn, sharing your perspectives, gathering a lot of feedback, a lot of people cheering on your message, also receiving some pushback at times.
Oh, yeah.
It's clear you're not afraid of ruffling feathers, maybe being more direct than others, maybe more direct than others are comfortable with even seeing. So how does your approach land in terms of bringing people with different perspectives together to find common ground or maybe even higher ground? How's that working for you?
For me, it works great. I recently did a workshop with a large company here in Austin that they're having diversity issues. Their executive team, if you will, consists of 45 people. When I did this workshop, I was the only Black person in the room. And so what needs to happen is Right now, we've weaponized a lot of the things that we're trying to accomplish. The word diversity, we've weaponized it. If we really cut through the word itself, we're talking about people. Because think about this for a second. I can have a room of 10 white guys, 10 white men, and I can have diversity. Some went to college, some didn't, some are married, some have kids, some aren't, some are Methodist, Lutheran, whatever. I can have diversity with 10 white guys. We've weaponized the word to where at the end of the day, we're talking about people. So let's open up and have a conversation. Let's not make anyone the enemy, but let's have a very open conversation and state some of this will be uncomfortable for people because they've never had to touch on it. But so much of it is people just don't know. Think about it. My dad was a pimp and drug dealer, had 23 kids. My mother was an orphan. Very few people can relate to that. Very few. And so I understand that. I'm not going to hold that against someone. I'm not going to, but I also, equally important, I don't want it held against me because I'm still human. I can contribute. I have a perspective to offer, and we have to be willing to listen, seek to understand, learn from one another. But we're so busy on trying to prove who's right, who's wrong, find reasons why what you think is wrong, and versus let's be open to listening, learning, seeking to understand, and also agree. We can have differences of opinion, and that's okay too.
I think that I know that we have, had some community members come there struggling with this, leading such diverse groups of employees. They have people who have different political beliefs. They may not see eye to eye. And it sounds like you're really trying to close the division around that as a leader and serve as a model for how you can come together and see eye to eye, or be okay with not seeing eye to eye and still working together. Does that sound?
To 100%, think about it. Right now, if arguably the biggest topic in our society is the Roe versus Wade ruling. And I've said this to people out loud. So I'm a God guy. My kids go to private Christian school. My wife and I would not ever have an abortion. However, as you know, Abby, I am the product of an illegal abortion. When my mother got pregnant the first time, she had a back alley illegal abortion that really went wrong. And it was so horrific that the second time she got pregnant with me, she said to herself, okay, I'm going to take my chances and raise a kid for 18 years versus have that abortion again. I never want any woman to have to go through that. So the fact of the matter is, I'm a God guy. My wife and I would never have an abortion, but I am 100% pro-choice because I know what my mother went through, and I don't want any woman to ever have to experience that. And more importantly, if you are a God person or not, it's not my place to tell you what maker you're going to have to make peace with. You're going to have to make peace with yourself, whatever maker you believe in or don't believe in. Not my place. And so I shared that message with our organization, and people loved it because we have people here who are Christian. We have people here who aren't, but people were, so I am anti-abortion, pro-choice. And when I said that to people, so many of them felt relieved because they said, oh, you've now given me my words. I'm also anti-abortion, but I'm too pro-choice. So right now, again, that's how you deal with very hot, combustible conversations. Have an open conversation.
Yeah, and I appreciate the kind of modeling the complexity of some of these conversations. And it's that for some people, it's not so black and white. And it's okay to share your more complex perspectives on things. I mean, we need more of that.
Abby, as you know, again, my dad was black, my mom was white, so everything's black and white for me.
Oh boy. Okay, I want to hop into some audience questions if you are ready for those.
Let's make it happen.
I see them coming in. And I haven't read these at all before because they're coming in fast and furious. So hopefully we're gonna It'd be okay. From our friend Hugo Lopez, he says, in Mexico, and as a learning and culture consultant for large companies, I get a lot of judgment for pointing out these closed eyes in leaders. And sooner or later, I face powerful leaders that just want the fancy title consultancy group to solve their issues. It's very frustrating. And I understand those biases and fears come from our cultural roots as Latinos. Do you have any advice for me to get the best out of this situation?
The advice that I would give, and many people aren't going to want to hear this, but again, this is now we're going to start speaking some truth around this topic, is we're operating, many of those leaders, if not all, that fall into the category that you just described, they're operating on the old playbook. And if you recall, the old playbook, all we had to do was worry about business. That was it. It was like, okay, profit, let's get business, let's grow, shareholders, and people, leave your personal problems at the door, get in here, do your job, period. Well, it has shifted, and many people don't want to admit this. There's a huge part where business has actually become secondary in the business itself. People are the lead of this. How are we serving and supporting? How are we putting people first? How are we taking care of people? Look at this. Why do you think unions are coming back so strong? Because people are tired of companies not taking care of them and treating them as humans. Think of this word, human capital. Abby, you know, now see, now I'm sparked. Human capital. What the hell is that? Are we trafficking people? Why are we referring to people as human capital? So for those executives that you come across, all you can do is speak truth, is that, hey, this is where you are now. If you don't put people first, this is going to catch up with you. They want to stay in the, hey, keep me over here, business first, people, leave your problems at the door. And it's just not going to be the way it works anymore. And for those executives, maybe you got some VPs and other folks where, you know, maybe the CEO is on board, but several of the VPs aren't on board. They got to go. And you've got to be willing in your role as the consultant to say that, well, everyone's not going to make it. Some of the people we got to throw off the ship, because the world we're in now, if you don't put people first, you will find yourself as a company ending up last.
This is what conscious capitalism is all about. Thank you, Javon. Great. Hugo's response was, woo, thank you. There you go. So he's excited by that. All right. So I think it's more of a tactical question from Inga. They say, hi, Javon. Thank you for your presentation. Very inspiring and thought-provoking, especially coming from someone who's biracial like myself. How do you feel about the diversity questions on job applications asking your race? I usually choose Hispanic or Latino, 2 or more races, but now I'm starting to ask why they need that information. And how do you feel about selecting I decline to identify option on a job application?
I feel that that's a personal preference, and that kind of gets back to a lot of what we're talking about. Me personally, if I had to fill out one, I would be very proud to check 2 or more races. I have found it took years, but now I'm like, wow, I love this black and white thing, you know, but, you know, back in the 70s, early 80s, man, I hated it. And so, but right now I would be very proud to check 2 or more races. But again, that comes down to personal preference. If you're not comfortable with it, you shouldn't have to you know, put that on the application.
Great. I appreciate that. Here's more of maybe a broad question from Marcial. Many people live and behave as superior to others. How can we help them realize that command and control structures do not work? How can we help them discover that they don't have workers who work for them? You say something about that, about workers who work for them. Tell us about that. I love that framing that you shared.
No, that's why I smiled. So that's again, that's a whole culture shift, because words matter. And it's funny, back when I was a kid, you used to hear the phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I don't give a damn. Words hurt. When I got called, my mom got called the N-word lover, and I would be called Oreo cookie, zebra, half-breed. Those words hurt. So I'm very intentional with a few words that I have, because there's not a lot going on up here. But I'm no one's boss. No one works for me. People work with me. We're in this together. To your point of control and command, within Scribe, if you're in leadership, your role is to serve and support. You don't have direct reports. When we speak to each other, we'll ask one of our tribe members, who's your direct support? So if you're in leadership, oh, well, my direct reports. No. Who do you directly support? Because here, we don't climb the corporate ladder. In fact, it's the opposite. If you're in leadership, you actually come down the ladder, because in leadership, your role is to serve and support. So in leadership, you're nothing but a foundational piece for all the people we serve and support who are executing on the role. So many people get a few letters after their name, and for whatever reason, they turn into the dictator from North Korea, and they don't know how to act because now I've got this title and I am God. And that's just it's the broken playbook. We have literally taught and trained people that that's how it's supposed to be. So it's an unraveling of this playbook, because leadership is nothing more than service and support. I say this to people all the time, and I'll shut up, Abby. 99.99999% of the decisions I make as a CEO should never be for me. The moment I start making decisions that benefit me first, get the hell out of the chair. You're not a leader.
Sing it. Thank you. I only have a few minutes left. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to drop them in here. I'm going to go back to a question that is related to the book, because you have a whole section of the book that relates to asking questions. And, typically we see that conscious leaders are voracious learners, right? They're always staying curious. Why is asking questions, specifically that, so important? And where are the opportunities there for leaders who are kind of willing to accept that they don't know everything and to truly get curious? What is it about questions?
So again, it goes back to a shift in leadership. So many people feel because you're the CEO, the president, you're in leadership, VP, whatever, you're supposed to be the oracle and know everything. And I'm opposite. If you ever, I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. And if I'm ever in a room with you and I'm the smartest person, run like hell. And so I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. So we specifically want people to ask questions, question everything, not in a smart ass manner, not in being a smart aleck about it or trying to, jab, but truly seek to learn, understand. So here's a great example of this with the company I spoke to the other day. Their CEO, 6'4", white guy, 63 years old, grew up in the Midwest, upper middle class family. He admitted it was great. He admitted, he goes, wow, I don't know a lot about the Black culture and the people that I serve and where they come from. And I go ask them. Go ask them. Like, what is the problem? Go ask. Hey, here's how I grew up. Can you share with me experiences that I don't understand? Think about this. We'll travel to other countries to experience other things, but we won't even ask the damn people we work with about their experience. How just ridiculous is that? So ask people, and people have challenged me, of course. People, I've always said, there are no stupid or dumb questions. And someone, of course, challenged me, and they said, that's not true. And I, okay, give me an example. They said, what about the person who asked the same question over and over again? And my response was, the person who asked the same question over and over again is not dumb or stupid. The person who continues to answer the question over and over again is the dumb and stupid person, because obviously you're not explaining yourself correctly, or there is a breakdown in communication and you need to get to that. But there are no dumb or stupid questions. I have built the great majority of my career from asking questions. And so much so we put that as one of our values in our company values Bible.
Company values Bible. I think we might need to get a hold of that. People might like to see that. I have a question.
Real quick, it's public facing. If you go to our website and you look for it's called the Culture Bible. If you go there, it's there. You can look at it, pull it up, and we're very specific of why we make it public facing. We want you to know who we are before you apply, not after. Think about that. So many companies, you don't know what they stand for until you're hired and you go through onboarding and they tell you their values and what they stand for. We want you to know who we are before you apply. That way, if you don't like who we are, save yourself some time, save us some time.
That's right. I love that. We have one probably last question from Hannah, which is, what advice do you have for a change maker / leader with a strong message, some success, but little leverage? Someone who's actually in need of a mentor like you. What advice do you have?
Oh, that's kind of an open-ended question, because what are you said strong message, but what are you trying to accomplish? There's a little
I'm guessing maybe they are aligned with what all the things you're saying, but they're not the leader. So what can they do? What can you do from the seat that you're sitting in that leans into what you're talking about, that if you're not the CEO or in, a leverageable position to have like a huge influence on a company as individuals?
I would say be consistent in your messaging. And here's what could possibly happen. And this is why so much of corporate America stays the way it is. People fall into the, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So you have to consistently put your message out there over and over. It's like cold calling if you're in sales. You just got to keep calling until you get a yes. And people start to adopt what you're saying. Use your language. If you want to shift from direct reports to direct supports, then you got to start saying direct supports every time you bring that up. If you want people to know, no, people don't work for me, they work with me, then you've got to put that out there. If you want to say, we want to attract and provide versus recruit and retain, think about that for a second. Retain, go look at the definition, to keep possession of. I don't want to retain anybody, so we don't recruit and retain. We attract and we provide. We want to attract great people. We want to provide a phenomenal culture, meaningful work, great pay. So it's so much of it is the language. You start to lead with the language and be consistent every time someone speaks to you. It'll start being adopted, or, and this is where you got to stand strong. If the company does not support what you're doing, hey, go somewhere that does.
Love it. Scribe is hiring. Head to Austin. Javon, we are at our time. Thank you so much for taking some time to share more about yourself, about your book, Modern Leadership. It's in the chat. We've listed the link to purchase if you want it. It's coming out next week, right? Is when it's officially out. So pick one up. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us today.
Abby, I appreciate you. If you call me, text me, send me smoke signals, I'm always there for you.
Appreciate it. And thank you everyone else for joining us today. If you would take 30 seconds and fill out the survey that we have dropped in the chat box, that will help us to continue to improve these programs going forward. So have a wonderful rest of your day and a fabulous weekend, holiday weekend.
Thank you all.
Bye.